Let's welcome in our guest, the Vice President of Basketball Ops and Team Development from the New Orleans Pelicans, my coworker, Swin Cash. Swin, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I was wondering when I was going to get this invitation to be here, so I'm happy to be here, JJ.
Well, thank you. I know we've had your former college and WNBA teammate, Sue Bird, on a few times, actually. So it was only a matter of time. Don't
get too comfortable. She tried to take over your podcast. Yeah, watch out for
her. We are recording this on Thursday. We've had 4 days of training camp. I think for a lot of our guys, this has been eye-opening. What has your impressions been so far of Stan Van Gundy?
I think one of my biggest impressions of him is just structure. It's like very familiar to me when it comes to kind of like his approach. I think because being in college with Coach Oriama, a lot of that was like structured, and then you go to the pros and there's different coaches you go through, but he's intense. And his attention to detail, I think, has been impeccable so far.
One of my favorite things about playing for him in Orlando for 5 years, and I'm already seeing this in 4 days, is the clarity. I always knew where I stood with Stan, and I always knew what I was supposed to do. He's very clear about what your responsibility is and what your job is on any given possession and within a team concept. It's just, to me as a player, you mentioned the word structure. That's what provides structure to me, is clarity of my job responsibility.
Yeah, and to add to that, JJ, I know you'll recall this. The one thing he said early on was, look, guys, I'm going to be very clear. There will be no gray area, which we have not seen. But he also gave enough room for the guys to say, look, I'm still going to be learning as we're going through. So it's not like I'm defining a role for you right now. Let me see what you got. So for me as a former player, like I would have been like, all right, like I've been working on this the offseason, that, like I'm going to go in and show you something. So you give me even an increased role or figure out what else I can do.
Do you guys feel like every coach, between the two of you, you've played for literally, some of the best coaches on the planet. Do you feel like every coach has the clarity, that clarity gene, or is that a thing that there are successful coaches who sometimes can get away with not having it?
No, they all don't have it. Absolutely not. The good ones have it. The great ones learn how to deliver it. Timing, I think, is everything. Like, I think when you set the tone from the beginning, people know what to expect. But there's also, and JJ, you probably could, talk even more to this when they talk about the players coach. There's some of those coaches who understand when you need a little bit more, can back off a little bit because either they've played the game or they've been around it. So their approach is different, but the structure and the clarity, they pretty much mirror each other.
We all want to be treated as men, and that was the thing that struck me the most. So the day before camp started, Swin, we had this meeting, and Stan talked for like an hour and 10 minutes. We were in chairs on the court, like all 10 feet apart or whatever. But he set the tone. So he made it very clear from day one. And that's what I think the best coaches do. He said, I'm going to treat you as a professional. Here's what your responsibilities are, right? No one wants to be treated as a child. But let's just use Swin, you're a parent. You're getting ready to have your second kid. But let's just use parenting, for example. If I let Knox and Kai get away with something over and over again for 2 or 3 months, and then we realize that there's now consequences to those actions, it's very hard for me to then set a new rule. All right, this is the rule now. Now you're not allowed to do this thing because of X, Y, and Z happened. And I think great coaches from day one set the rules in place so that as all teams and as all players, as you hit those tough times, you then don't have to recalibrate. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And if you've played in structure like that, it's very difficult to either go to a team or work for a team if you don't see that, because you know that having that a lot of times will equal some level of success. That doesn't mean you're going to win a championship, but in every single structure of a championship team, there's something that's there that is identical. And for me, like I've just been in teams that have had success, that kind of structure and accountability is important.
But so let me ask you guys this question, speaking in complete hypotheticals based off of, the situation that you're both in, but in the NBA in particular, there's certain cases where there are incredible talents who might push the issue on certain things and maybe show up at certain times and not show up at certain times or whatever it may be. And you have to make the calculation as a coach, as an organization, whatever it is, they might be able to get a little bit more of leeway, because of what they bring to the table. So like, how do you, for both of you guys as like leaders, how do you juggle to what JJ's saying, like you got to keep people in line, but also realizing like this is a talent-driven sport. And if you have somebody who's better than everybody else, sometimes they are able to get away with a little bit more.
Swin, that's a great question, Tommy. Great question. Swin, by any chance, did you read the article in The Athletic maybe 7 or 10 days ago about the Clippers last year and just the implosion of whatever culture they had built? Did you read that article by any chance?
No, I didn't get a chance to read that one.
So I read the article, and the whole time I'm reading it, I'm thinking, this is literally every NBA team I've ever been on. That's just the league. Star players are allowed to get away with more. And as a role player, I accepted that a long fucking time ago. Like I just, I played with Prime Dwight. Prime Dwight got away with stuff. Even playing for Stan. We all knew that there was a little bit of leeway with Dwight. Buses in 30 minutes after a game. Dwight's getting out of the shower, still has to do media 45 minutes later, And like we had to, like it was just a known thing. Like we were going to deal with that. So Tommy, I do think you have to find that balance. The question becomes, does a person or a player's, does their actions, does their behavior, is it deteriorating the culture? Is it deteriorating the day-to-day mood? At that point in time, I think, any coach would have to sort of step in and say, all right, we need to remedy this situation.
Well, to add to that, JJ, I would say this, Tommy, is that star players who don't need the benefits between the lines and they're held accountable between the lines, it makes it easier at times to give a little bit of leeway from what I've seen in the league on other things, the bus, certain things like meetings, certain things happen there. But having a certain level of accountability when you're competing and the structure that you're trying to build, like guys taking days off, JJ, like how much does that irritate you whenever you're a hard worker and then here's this guy pissing off over here like, I think I'm gonna hand in my pink slip for today and take a day off when they're really not injured. So coaches that call BS on that, those are the ones that start gaining more respect from the rest of the team. And eventually you get to a point where guys, when they're trying to win, they're going to show up. The other stuff, if you can deal with it, so be it. But Stan probably learned, I would say, JJ, from that time in Orlando, because when he came in, what did he first say to us? Like, everything's across the board. So I do believe if one of our guys is going to be late for the bus will be leaving without you.
That hasn't happened in like 10 or 12 years in my career, by the way.
And that was the one thing, and I loved it. And I was sitting there waiting and thinking, well, we have a good group. I will say this, like from last year even to this year, I feel like we have guys that will respect the time. But when it happens, I'm gonna have to pull that card back out. Like Stan, you said if they're not here, we're out. We're out.
I can't remember who it was. The year before I got to Orlando, I had Brian Hill as a coach, and he was similar to Stan self-deprecating the other day. He was like, he's an old school guy, right? What does that mean? Like he doesn't put up with any shit. So Brian Hill had a rule like if you were late for the plane was leaving, and you had to get on a commercial flight. So I don't want to name names because I don't want to get the name wrong of the guy, of the player. But one of my teammates, my rookie year, was like, yeah, last year I was late to the plane and I had to catch a commercial flight, which is just humiliating. But I saw it happen with one of my teammates in Philly, And it was one of those things where, yeah, so like he's on his way to the arena or on his way to the airport after practice. He realizes he forgot his passport. We were going to Toronto. And so he had to drive all the way home to get his passport. Well, flying internationally, like there's not a ton of leeway there for, delaying a plane. So we just left. And then he met us in Toronto. What was Gino like? I wanted to ask you about Gino. And Gino's had, he's won 11 NCAA championships. He's had some of the most talented teams ever in college basketball history. And your 2002 team may be one of the most talented teams in any team sport ever. So there's the talent aspect, of course, that every coach has to have. You have to win big with talent. But certainly Gino has figured out a way to get y'all to buy in to whatever he's preaching. What is his sort of secret?
I think he's really, really good, JJ. And Birdie may have told you this. He figures out what buttons he needs to push for people that are kind of ultra competitive. And so you're bringing in all of these All-Americans and people that have a lot of talent. There's two things I always felt that he did. When you come in as freshman, he tries to crush you and make you feel like it doesn't matter if you scored 2,000 points in high school. He makes you feel like the bottom of the barrel. And then from there, he tries to build you up, but he figures out what buttons to push to get you to get all the way to that next level. And that's why it works for some players. And as you started seeing players transfer out, I used to say, you know what? You have to have a certain kind of mentality and a certain work ethic to play for him. He's not for everybody. And parents have called me before and they're like, well, tell me about UConn. And I'm like, well, tell me about your kid. Then I can tell you about you. But that is him.
That reminds me a little bit of Stan, because when I first started playing for Stan, my second year in the NBA, I didn't play at all that year. And I was just like, what the fuck? Who is this guy? Like, what the fuck? What is this? But he figured out a way to push my buttons, and I became a better player because of it. When you're in the moment, though, you don't have that sort of reflective nature of like, this is going to be good for me or this was good for me. When you're in the moment, it can be frustrating, I would assume.
You think? I mean, I can tell you one story where it's like everybody had their thing with him, right? Whenever he's yelling or getting on them. And I remember this one time for me, like he always used to try to figure out what would make me either crack. And so I used to just look up at the banners and stuff, but he's like screaming, going crazy. And I used to have this look on my face where it was like, I knew it bugged the hell out of him that I was looking at the banners, And then I remember with Sue, because Sue was a perfectionist and we were roommates in college, I used to be like, don't let him get to you. Like, he's coming. And so Sue, this one time in practice, like she was throwing the ball all over the gym. It was going here, it was going there. And so at UConn, at Gamble, there's like literally students would walk in and they could just walk around up top to get to the other side. So there's like this guy walking through. Sue throws the ball in that direction. It's a turnover. He's like, hey, you up there. And the kid's like mortified. He's like, Gino's talking to me. He looks down and he's like, yeah. Sue Bird must like you. Sue Bird must like you. She's throwing the ball up there to you. And Sue's just like beat red. Like the rest of us are over there like dying, laughing, cracking up. But he's sarcastic like that. But in that moment, if you knew Sue, like that was like the worst thing ever. And I swear for like the next week, like she's talking about it, like, why would he do that? I'm like, because that's just him. But like, that's how he knew how to push our buttons. But after that, Sue's like, no, I'm not turning the ball over. I'm not doing this. Like, she's locked in. Coaches just use different things. And he's like Stan from the standpoint that he's very sarcastic. And I think Stan is to a point. But with these masks on, JJ, I don't know if he delivers it as well because the guys can't see his facial expression.
He is a funny dude, and you're exactly right. He's dropped a couple really dry one-liners, and I'm like, oh, that was good, but nobody else got it.
And I don't know if that's like because we're older do we get it, or is it just because they're just like they have this impression of what Stan's going to be, and it's interesting though.
Rockstar Games presents the biggest and most action-packed update to Grand Theft Auto Online yet, the KO Perico Heist. The Madrazo crime family have a problem with their supplier, the infamous drug lord El Rubio. Now it's up to you to find a way to infiltrate El Rubio's heavily secured private island of Cayo Perico and escape with all of the jewels, arts, and cash you can carry. Choose your crew or even go at it alone. Just make it back to Los Santos in one piece.
From lush jungle reconnaissance to dance parties on golden beaches, the Cayo Perico Heist is an all-new Grand Theft Auto online adventure for 1 to 4 players as you plan, prepare, and execute a daring island heist featuring an array of exciting new vehicles and weapons.
This game sounds fucking awesome.
Yeah, it sounds sick.
The Cayo Perico Heist also introduces the Music Locker, a new underground dance club and social space featuring world-class DJs Moody Man, or is it Moody Mon? Not sure. Kind of music, and Palms Tracks, plus new radio stations from Julian Casablancas and Joy Orbison, updates to existing radio stations, and much more. Access to Grand Theft Auto Online and the Cayo Perico Heist is free with every copy of Grand Theft Auto 5. Play now on PlayStation 4 and via backward compatibility on PlayStation 5, rated M for mature. Hey Tommy, did you hear that? That's the sound of a nice cold vaccine being opened up. And what better way to celebrate that news than by cracking open an ice cold Coors Light? We always talk about how we all need to hit the reset button, right? Well, combining that great achievement and an ice cold Coors Light is just about as good as you can get. I mean, Coors Light is literally made to chill.
No doubt. I know that when we crack open a nice cold Coors Light, everything just seems better. It's mountain cold refreshment that's cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged. It's the perfect beer to help you unwind and cap off your day.
So no matter where the day takes you, Coors Light will always be there to help you hit that reset button. Go grab a Coors Light or have it delivered straight to your door at get.coorslight.com. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
So when I have a weird question about the talent on those teams, like because those teams were so good, I don't think we've ever actually talked to Sue about this. Because those teams were so good, did you guys have times where like you would practice and then you would get into games and you would be like, it's easier? You know what I mean? Like you're just playing and you're like, okay, like this is like so much easier than anything that you're just having when you're just playing each other.
Literally all the time.
Yeah.
Because we practice against guys, we practice against ourselves. Our practices were always harder than the games. All the time. Like literally it would be one of those things where our shoot arounds would be a game and then we would go play the game. And I think that's helped me a lot in my career. It's just like that level of intensity day in and day out. So it's just what I expected when I went to the pros. And that's why a lot of times, even in the WNBA, you would hear coaches and GMs say all the time, like, you got to have a kid from UConn on your team. Like they understand the work ethic, they understand this, they understand that. And it's because it was literally drilled every day. There was no days off. Even when you felt like bad and you're having a bad practice, like Coach Oriama's back could be turned, but he would see something and you're like, does this dude just never stop? Like, what's wrong with you? But, it made you a better player.
At Duke, we have something called the Brotherhood. That's what they call it. I guess that's the official name.
Never heard of that, JJ.
Yeah, never heard of it. I know. But, well, we had 5 guys on the team last year from Duke. But did you all have something similar? Because even if it's not necessarily an official thing, but I've found, because Coach K is sort of an institution in his own right, in the same way that Gino is at UConn. You're talking about 10 generations of players that have played for Coach K, and we all sort of have a relationship with each other. So even the young guys that are, have been in the league 2 or 3 years, there's a level of friendship and a level of respect. And then I know guys from the 80s and the early 90s that I'm friends with. And is that cross-generational thing with UConn women's basketball players?
Yes. And I think it's not only the women's basketball, but it's also the men's. I mean, literally going to UConn, especially the time that we went there and everything was building up, the championships were happening. The women's team and the men's team were like this. And so, some of my closest friends in college were on our men's team. And a lot of that had to do was because within our state, we were treated like the professional team. And you know how it is, JJ. It's just like, it's a whole different kind of level where we had like this rule. You never go to the mall and have on UConn stuff. Like that was the thing, because literally people were running up to you and we wanting autographs. And it was like, you were rock stars before you even got to the WNBA. So I remember sitting down at WNBA for like the first game, and this is like, 2002. And like, they're like, the media's coming in, they're prepping me. They're like, hey, the media's coming in, you guys be prepared. And like, a few people came in and I'm like, okay, like, like millions of cameras every day. We're used to a different level, but you know, at school with the men and women's team, we always just have this whole bleed blue. So you'll see it all the time, whether it's Karan, it's Rip, it's whoever, like we just all were just like one unit. And we had to be, because like the campus was that small. Now it's expanded. We go to a lot of Final Fours. Like that's when we kind of come back together. So there is that brother and sisterhood, I would say, at UConn.
Let's go back to the Pelicans. I wanna ask you, and I talk to Griff all the time. I talk to Trajan all the time, and you and I talk all the time. So this is more for the listener. But you know, in the personnel moves you guys made, and in hiring Stan, what obviously wins and losses, but what do you think is the focus of improvement? Like, what is your hope for the Pelicans this year? If there's one thing that we could really improve on that you hope to see,
it would be to lay the groundwork down for the future. And that doesn't mean that we're in a rebuild or anything like that. It just means that culturally, when people use that word a lot, culture, it means that we are identified as this thing. You know, whenever you play our team, whenever you come to New Orleans, whenever you see Pelicans on the front of our jerseys, what we stand for, how we're going to play, the intensity we have, the intellect that we have. Those are things that, especially having a team as young as we have, that obviously is going to grow together. We have a tremendous amount of talent, but you have to foster that in the right way in order to see it grow. And I think we did a wonderful job as a collective this offseason of not just saying, hey, we want to hire a coach that can coach great talent, but somebody that understands the importance of, you know, what happens on the court, off the court. What are our guys passionate about? Like, we really wanted somebody to be in that space to be able to navigate and help guys grow this organization.
Was that opportunity a big reason for you coming down to New Orleans in the first place? The ability to sort of have that input on building a culture?
It was, JJ. And that's a great question, because I get asked this a lot. Like, why did you do it? Because I was very comfortable in New York. Like, my husband and I, like, his family was there. We were good. I was doing TV, had my nice schedule. And when I worked with Griff down at Turner, we were just sitting, kind of just kicking it, you know, talking about hoops and stuff. And as I was leaving out, Griff had said to me, you know what? If I get one of these one of these, you know, GM jobs or whatever, I'm going to come talk to you. And I literally said to him, JJ, okay, cool, peace. And like left out, didn't think anything about it. So I get maybe like a week and a half later, I get the ESPN ping. David Griffin's been hired for the Pelicans. Who's next on my phone is Griff, right? So as we're talking through, and Griff was very transparent, a lot like Stan, where he was like, I don't know what it's going to look like. I just know that you've been not only around the game, but all these different aspects of the game, from media to the union to this. I want to build something special and I want you to come. So I sat down and talked to my husband about it. And I was like, I don't know, like, we're good right here. It's a good opportunity, but I never had these aspirations of like, I need to be on an executive with a team. And Steve looked at me and he's like, you sit here all the time and talk about what you would do if you're on a team. Here's your opportunity. If you want to do it, let's go. And so that challenge for me was not only to come here and to try to build something special, but something meaningful, right? And I knew also coming, like, I was going to be in a position where I was going to be a woman. That didn't matter to me. I was going to be a Black woman. Okay, that didn't matter to me as much either. What mattered to me is that I could do the job to the best of my ability, that I can learn. And if I decided to stay and one day want to run a team, that I would have all the tools to do that. And Griff is a great person, I feel like, to learn from. So that's kind of how I got here.
I think I've said this publicly before, and I hope I've said this to you, and I think I have, but I've just been so impressed by your leadership. And I assume, you know, that was developed at UConn, developed over the course of your career, but the impact that you've had on our franchise in such a brief amount of time, in basically a year and a half, is remarkable. It really is. And your leadership specifically during the the social unrest this summer with our team and with all of the stuff around COVID and the bubble, like you filled a void. And, no, I'm serious. We got on these Zoom calls, over the course of 3-4 months. And it's like, well, who's the voice on the call? Who's putting their imprint on every call, on every Zoom session? And it's like, it was Swin. It was you.
No, thank you, Jay. That's so sweet. It was really, I will say this, and for a lot of people, probably your listeners, male, female, anything, like this has been a very tough year for all of us. And it's funny because for me, I was pregnant, and the one thing that I kept thinking about in my mind was, yes, I'm pregnant. I'm not in the bubble. I'm home. But these guys are in the bubble away from their families. This is what they care about. So we can do our part to make sure that we're still staying there. We're staying engaged. We're learning. So once they're out of the bubble next season, they can apply it. So that was my mindset. And you guys actually got me through it. Because I really was like having a baby right now in COVID, like, it's a little crazy. But, I just, from a leadership standpoint, I really just take pride in, I know some of the things I didn't have as a player. And my hope always is to try to provide that and give people an insight of, if we make the guys' lives a little easier over here, if we make their families' life easier, if we're able to help them be the best they can be on the court, they will produce. Because I know as an athlete, I would have produced. Like, take all those variables off the table and make it easy for me. I'm going to come out here and run through a brick wall. If everything else is crazy around me, it's very difficult to focus on my job. And so every day, that's kind of the mindset that I bring in from a leadership standpoint is, how do we make it better so that you guys can do what you need to do easily?
So I was going to say one positive from 2020 for you, of course, is the Hall of Fame. Congrats on that, obviously.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's an insane, it's a Hall of Fame. So every year it's an amazing class, but this year in particular is just such a loaded group. Like, what does it sort of mean? What does that mean to you kind of overall, having this happen?
Well, Tommy, to break it down for you a little bit, I did get selected to the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, which I'm very grateful for. I was not selected for the Hall of Fame as far as the Naismith Hall of Fame, which
you were nominated. You were nominated.
I was
Don't
nominated.
Be humble. You were.
So can you explain? And I'm sorry for this. Can you explain to the listener and the idiot, aka me, what the difference is?
So no, there's 2 Hall of Fames, right? And both are amazing. There's the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, and then there's the Naismith Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And so I was nominated for both. I first ballot for the Women's Hall of Fame. Didn't make it for the Naismith Hall of Fame. And so maybe next year it'll come back around and we'll see. But it was just, to even be nominated was like kind of mind blowing because it's not something that I never expected. And then to obviously get the nod for the Women's Hall of Fame, it just, if you're a kid and you started out playing this sport because you loved it, it's one of those things where you don't look at, like, I never thought about playing for USA Basketball. I ended up playing for USA Basketball. I didn't think about like playing pro. The reason why I started playing basketball literally is because I grew up, my mom's 1 of 12. I have 75 first cousins. We played every single sport to stay out of trouble. And then my mom said to me, look, listen, if you want to go to college, I can't afford to pay for you to go to college, but if somebody's saying that you're pretty good, you probably get a scholarship. And that's why I just got good grades and played basketball. So to be recognized in the Hall of Fame, I think it's more so for the people around me to help me get there. But when the moment comes and that induction happens, I definitely am blessed. So for all the listeners out there, thank you for your support. If you're listening, next year will be one ceremony, and then we'll see if there's 2.
You're a Hall of Famer in my book, Swin. Any form of the Hall of Fame.
Anytime you get in the Hall, anytime you get in something called the Hall of Fame, it's amazing.
I gave Swin shit for like a month.
Yeah. JJ, and for sure, you said like you're gonna be there. So if I did not, I need you in Chelsea in the building. All right.
If Swin gets in the Naismith Hall of Fame, I'm there in person. I told Swin that when she first got nominated. I'm there in person. Have you ever watched the World Series of Poker on TV and dreamed of winning big like the pros? Well, now you can. The official World Series of Poker app lets you play real-time poker with poker fans around the world. Own your Hold'em skills in virtual cash games and tournaments, play in casino mode to go up against the house, or connect your Facebook account to set up a virtual table with friends. It's as close to the real thing as you can get, without the $10,000 buy-in.
This is definitely something I need to do, considering how awesome of a poker player I am, as JJ can attest to.
That's debatable.
I'd clean up. Anyway, the WSOP app is a great way to improve your poker skills, and it's free to download. And as the #1 free poker game, WSOP always has tons of players online to match up against whenever you want to play. Best of all, you can get 1 million chips as a bonus gift when you join today.
So what's the holdup? Download the WSOP app in the Apple App Store or on Google Play and Amazon now. And don't forget to use the promo code WSOPJJ for 1 million bonus chips when you sign up. That's 1 million bonus chips when you download the WSOP app using promo code WSOPJJ. The Christmas season is officially upon us, and while there's a lot about the holidays that feels different this year, I know one thing that might make them just a little bit brighter. Wonder Woman 1984 is coming out on December 25th, and you'll have 2 ways to experience the epic adventure: in theaters and streaming exclusively on HBO Max. Tommy, this sounds right up your alley.
Right up my alley.
I'm a big streaming guy. Believe in wonder again with Gal Gadot, Chris Pine, Kristen Wiig, and Pedro Pascal. Wonder Woman 1984 is rated PG-13 and sure to be a wonderfully way to celebrate the holiday season and with the ones you love. You brought up all the sports you played. I want to confirm something real quick. So you played a bunch of sports, but your true passion was entertainment. You like to do school plays and dramas.
Yes.
I don't even, like, knowing you now, I'm like, I don't even see that. I'm trying to picture Swin on stage.
You know what? Like, on stage, musical things, all of that. Like, it was fun for me. And then I got so much taller than everybody else. And I kept thinking about, like, man, I could be an actress. And everybody's like, no, everybody in Hollywood's like 5'5", until I met Gina Davis. And I was like, Gina, there's hope. But I've done a couple of things, but probably my claim to fame for my nieces and nephews was when I was in Bring It On, All or Nothing. And this is the time that Rihanna came out. And so Rihanna's in the movie with me. And they didn't even give a dang. Like, I had just won a championship, all that stuff. And they're like, yo, you were in a movie with Rihanna?
That's pretty good, though. Bring It On, All or Nothing's pretty good. I get it.
But come on. I'm like, I've done a couple of things. They're like, no, like, you know Rihanna? I was like, oh my goodness. But yeah, so.
Swin, what do you know what number in the Bring It On series that Bring It On All or Nothing was?
I
was
think
it
the second
fourth?
one.
It was the second one.
I think it was the second one. I've definitely seen it.
I think it was the second one.
Because I dated a girl who was in Bring It On, In It to Win It.
That was the third one. There was
a third one. Yes, I dated her. She was the person I dated before I dated Chelsea.
Please edit this podcast.
This is the third one. Bring It On, All or Nothing is the third one.
It's the third one? Which
2006.
Which one is the one JJ's talking about?
In It to Win It.
In It to Win is that's the next one. That's number 4.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about a comment that Kara Lawson made on our podcast. Okay. So we asked her, she was with the Boston Celtics last year. She's now the head coach of the Duke women's basketball team. We asked her what was her biggest surprise or biggest revelation, I guess, about being around NBA players every day. And you've been around the game, and you've obviously been around NBA players for most of your adult life, but this is really the first time where, you're working for a team and you're around us all the time. Her comment was, I was surprised by how sensitive everybody was. I'm not saying you have to agree with her, but what is the thing that has surprised you the most about NBA players in general?
The thing that surprised me the most, I don't think that there was as many surprises for me from the player standpoint, but there was more surprises from how people around them treated them. And I couldn't connect that with my brain because I never have been on the other side of that. I've been the athlete. And so, just to use an example, Like it would take somebody to go through 3 different people who want to ask you a question, and only that one person could ask JJ. And so for me, I'm like, he's about to finish. Like, no, I'm going over there and asking the question. And if not, he'll tell me, he'll get it later, and then we move on. And so part of that goes back to how your culture is. And the biggest thing that I've learned is streamlining things for guys. Like it makes it so much easier and simplifies things. Like and Kara talks about the guys being sensitive. I just didn't realize that some people walked on eggshells so much, when it's like, they're human beings. I know they're getting paid a crap load of money, but that has nothing to do with, if you treat people equally, you create this atmosphere where there's not this tension. And so that kind of surprised me a little bit. You always hear about it being there, but once you're in it, you're like, all right, you got to cut all this other stuff out immediately.
I just think, and as a current player, I have to talk directly to my teammates. There's no other way that I could ever communicate with them. And I when I say directly, I don't just mean person to person. I mean directly and candidly. And as I've gotten older, I've always felt, especially as I talk to younger players that are still sort of finding their way and finding their routines and whatnot, like if I'm not candid with them, I'm doing them a disservice. And I think Stan said this in that first meeting. I feel the same way. He wants everyone on our team to have long careers and make a lot of money and win a lot of games. That's all it comes down to. So for me, and I've said this before, but for me, I want Nikhil to be an all-star someday. Like that would be super meaning, or to have a 15-year career and play at a high level. Like that would be meaningful to me if 12 years from now somebody asks him, well, who was the people that were important to you early on in your career? And he says, oh, it was JJ. That sort of thing is important to me. So there's no other way to get there without being direct.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And JJ, I would just say this. One of the most fulfilling things throughout my career when I finished my career and I went into kind of like the front office with the Liberty and then obviously coming here, is to have former players this summer when the WNBA was, creating their platform and, and say her name, and having younger players that reached out like, I respect what you've done. I want your input on this. Or who have started foundations or have gone into business being entrepreneurs. Or for instance, Sugar Rogers she tried to do this book, JJ, I'm telling you, it may have been 5 years. She just kept going on about this book. And we went step by step, and she's about to next year release her first book. So it's not always about just the part of in the game and playing the game. It's about how do we help people grow as human beings too. And that's the part where I think some of the best players like you that have had really long careers and continue to play at a high level, that's the imprint that you leave. And that's when people talk about legacy.
I think that's a great perspective. You're a superstar, Swin. You know how much I appreciate you. Thank you for this time.
You guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Swin.
Thanks, guys. Take care.